So the idea of a retreat is pretty ancient to mysticism. But I wonder how often people really look into what this means, to retreat. Tony said, isn't that what you do when you're losing the war?
Yes, what we do when we're losing the war.
Soldiers meditating.
Retreat!
But this is kind of, it is deserteren out of life. Deserteren?
To deserve life in a way.
To desert the army, to desert life. It has a...
Yeah. So in retreating there is this idea of drawing back to something which is safe, which brings relief. So there's a movement from some engagement backwards. In our case, it's a movement from the regular life, the regular entanglements and routines and familiar patterns to a space behind that. This space contains a lot of promise, otherwise we wouldn't retreat there. There's an expectation in our movement inwards. Okay, I need time alone now. But within this space there's comfort, there are resources, perhaps there are answers, clarity, perspective. So in a spiritual retreat, the first thing we're retreating from is the thinking habits of our minds. The automatic thinking processes where one thought triggers another thought, where we tell ourselves stories and tweak them a little bit according to our needs, where we react on the first level mentally to things which are happening around us. If there is a sudden fear or an insecurity, our minds tend to be reactive, to react in an attempt to try and fix it, to find the peace back again. If we feel uncomfortable or too vulnerable, the mind tends to pick up the task of trying to make things good by giving structure. And we do this by thinking. Some of us do it more by talking, but if we can't talk, we think it in one of our internal voices. So in becoming aware of our internal voices, it's possible to move into a deeper listening. To the tone or quality of the one who is speaking, the voice we hear in our thoughts, in our minds. And even of where these voices are arising from or coming from. And when we talk about voices and thinking, what often happens is we become very aware of the silence within ourselves. It's almost as if the voices were school children, and when we are the teacher, we become aware of the voices, of the thoughts, and suddenly there's a hush. Teachers. There's a silence inside the mind. Yet this silence in itself also has a quality. It's not a dead thing, it's very, very alive. In the first instance, what we find in silence is our own individual silence, our private silence. And it can be a silence of a certain flavor according to the moment. It can be a silence which is a wall. I put this silence between myself and others. I'm not expressing. It can be a silence which is full of sadness, a silence of isolation. It can be a silence of softness and acceptance, contentment. But in a way, the silence is communicating another kind of thought without words, without imagination. When we begin to share silence and attune to the silence among us, which is the same silence in its purity, what we can notice is this porous edge where our personal silence ends and the shared silence begins. The silence we share.
How you call the edge where your personal silence?
When we really move into our own silence and then expand our awareness to become conscious of the silence between us, then there can be a little bit of friction or shock, almost a fear of intimacy, because we are sharing silence. And this can be very powerful. And it's as if the light is showing us where our invisible borders are between ourselves and others, when we connect to the silence of all of us together. silence is prevalent across the universe, across nature, across everything. It's an absolute. The opposite of noise is quiet. Silence has no opposite. So in falling into silence, it's almost a process which is held back by degrees by our fears, because we want to keep our form. There's a fear in almost collapsing into silence, as if it wasn't there all the time anyway. There is very little noise in the universe and an enormous amount of silence. Because of the silence, the noise can exist. The silence is in no way in competition with our thinking. We are totally able to allow this silence within ourselves. At the same time, the thinking is happening. The silence is also there. Yet the more we allow the silence to also be there, the less we need to name things. We can look at whatever it is we are seeing without needing to place a name on it. We can even have a whole thought without needing to put words to it. We can allow wisdom to be there and understanding to happen by itself without it even needing to become conscious, because the work is done. So on the level of the mind, part of the retreating is retreating from the need to name things. When we allow the silence on the level of our minds to be there as it is there always, and has always been there, automatically a silence is opened on the level of awareness and feeling. As if in rhythm, in synchronicity, also our feelings are freed because there's a silence which attunes. We become more aware of how we're feeling right now, or what we're feeling. And this can rise up to the mind to birth a thought. And it can be quite beautiful to watch that without holding on to any thought that arises and dissolves. So in a way, in the movement of retreat, on all the levels, there are 3 stages. The first is to awaken. I'm here, in a new place, with new people. I have my form. I'm awake. And to awaken also to where we are limited. In this awakening we get a snapshot of how we come in to the present moment. This is very much caught in time. And I don't have anything against time. Time is the miracle and the precious thing that we're doing here. But in the first step back, we get a glimpse of time. We get a glimpse of time in the sense of also ourselves in physical time. Here I am, I'm 46 years old. It's the same one who was in England as a child, as a 9-year-old. It's the same one that got married when she was 23. It's the same one that was in Holland a month ago. But it's still me, in time. And in falling back in this witnessing of our time, we begin to move into the timeless. This is the second stage, because the timeless is still dependent on time. Just as time arises out of the timeless. The opposite of time is timelessness. And in a way, it's still a dance. It's still a polarity. Check in, check out, check in, check out. The third stage of retreating, in this case on the level of conscious time, is the movement into the eternal, into eternity, which doesn't depend on time, or timelessness, or creation, or destruction, or birth, or death, which has no beginning, no end, but which is really not a concept. It's something so intimately known to us from behind even our seeing, this space which is totally non-dependent, not caught in a polarity, not happening, and yet it's the source of all happening, of all that happens. And which is always there for us, whether or not we allow it. It really doesn't matter to it. It's a space in which we are truly free.
Space in eternity, which I know is eternity.
We're truly free in the sense that there is no consequence to anything that's happened or is happening or will happen. And it's not an abstract concept, it's really here, now, in its immensity. It's almost the majority of perception. It's not far away. It's close to home, very, 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 very close to home. As we are walking through nature in the afternoon and throughout these days, we're really blessed with the opportunity to connect with the silence and the eternal in nature itself. At first it might be with just one tree or flower, to share the silence with a tree. But very soon and automatically by itself, one tree will become all of the trees. And on from there, the planet which is part of who we are. Humanity lives in a kind of skin over the planet, as if it's not part of it, as if it's not from the basis to the highest level intimately at one with it, as if it's not supported unconditionally. We are so caught in the agendas of our minds, individually and socially and collectively, that we deny ourselves the conscious sharing of this tremendous support. And in retreating, we open this up again, open up this channel. Also outside our office window, there are trees. Every tree is welcoming, if we recognize it from our existence to its existence. And it is silencing, but not in a dead way, in a way which is full of life. And stillness, and information, but the kind of information that arises naturally from silence. In a very attuned and precise way to our needs. So I think it's nice to meditate. I think there's a need.